Okay, team. Look, we're going to get started with a relatively short speaking program. Relatively short is exactly the way that Dan would have wanted it. We knew him. And in a lot of ways, Dan actually disagreed with the whole concept of any type of a funeral. So in a lot of ways, folks, we're actually in breach, and we have to agree not to tell Dan what it is that we did here. I'm Jeff Hamilton, Dan's son. This is going to first start off with really a thank you. We're really glad that everybody could make it here today. Definitely not the best weather for traveling, and we've even got some folks in from out of town. So that's big time appreciated. And on behalf of the Hamilton family, and especially my mother Polly, we just wanted to thank everybody for the flowers, for the notes, for the phone calls, and for the donations to the Delta Hospital Foundation. They did a great job of looking after Dan at the end of his life. If anybody knew Dan, anybody knew him for longer than about 10 minutes, okay, they would understand that Dan considered himself to be the luckiest guy ever. He knew that life was finite, that it wasn't forever, and I think he did a pretty good job of acting accordingly. If he was here, and it kind of seems like he is, doesn't it? He would have told us that the world needs another sad funeral like a moose needs a hat rack. That's what he would have said. We've got pictures here on display of Dan through different parts of his life. And when you look at the pictures, you definitely see images of a progression of a life, of a man that actually had a pretty good run of things, didn't he? You see a lot of pictures of him traveling, a lot of good times with friends, family, a lot of golf trips. We actually think that Dan did as many golf trips in about a 6 month period as most men do now for the rest of their lives. That's all they'd be allowed to do. So we hope that he had fun. You might notice also that in the pictures, there's not a lot of images of Dan doing things like holding a shovel, eating at a cheap restaurant, working at a desk late at night, doing yard work. Okay, so if anybody's looking for any pictures like that, don't, because there aren't any. When we were going through the pictures, there was one thing that was kind of funny. We saw a picture of him about 20 years ago, and it was a hot day. He was wearing shorts, and I thought just for a second that there might be another side of him that I didn't know. He was looking quite athletic, and he had something in the crook of his arm that was white. I thought it was a ball. And right at that minute, my two nieces, Jessica and Joelle, corrected me. They said, "No, Uncle Jeff, that's a cooler." So that's Dan. It's fitting that we're having this celebration here because Dan, he loved golf. This very Beach Grove golf course, he knew just about every inch of the place, with the exception of the fairway. And I don't think that there was anybody that could tell that man versus golf story better than Danny could, right? And I remember when we were kids, we would hear him come home and he would explain what he did on the 12th hole, right? Shanked it off the tee, off of the washroom, oh no, off of TJ's shoe, off of the golf cart for a 9, oh no, blew it onto 16th Avenue, on the green, got the yips again, and then I ended up with a German. What's a German, Dad? A 9. So what he loved more than anything about the game were all of the people that were connected to this club. A lot of them are here today, so thank you for that. Dan followed all sports. We know that about him. I don't think that there's a sport or a player or a stat that he didn't know. And he really, really liked the sports that had a lot of numbers. That's kind of how his mind worked. He loved the numbers. And the cool thing about sports with numbers is that you could bet on them, which he did from time to time. And if he could find a transaction that, well, if it didn't hurt anybody, but if it started with the words "Psst, buddy," and it ended up with him picking up an unmarked envelope from an undisclosed location, he was all for it. And we also think that as of right now, there's a gold statue of him being built in the lobby of the Reno Hilton to commemorate his time there. Dan had a career in sales that spanned about 40 years, met a lot of people, he saw a lot of places, and he absolutely loved what he did. He seemed to have a story that was attached to every Canadian city that seemed to involve a sports bar, a bunch of his good work colleagues, a lot of drinks, and then somebody that did something that they shouldn't have. And we sure love those stories. If Dan was your dad, and Rick can attest to this, the interesting thing about him was that he didn't have an in-between or a neutral switch. It was either be very, very hard on us for things, or extra fun, spontaneous dad. No in-between. So it was either give us a lecture for 14 hours for getting a C, or we're going to do a lot of cool trips. Rick and I could both do some fairly intricate betting at the track by the time we were about 10, and we could mix drinks by the time that we were 12. So just no in between whatsoever. But you know what he also did? He also found time to coach all of our teams. He never missed a game. Got involved in the sports, and he never missed a game. One might wonder how it was that he was able to do so many things and be so effective with his time. The answer to that is that he married Polly Hamilton. And that was another reason why he was the luckiest man ever. Because Polly was, and remains, just about the most organized, diplomatic, tactful person on the planet. This actually allowed Dan to have his success, and he would have been the first one to say so. So Dan, the thing about him, for a guy that never made it past grade 10, he was incredibly self-educated. He was self-educated, he was worldly, he was opinionated, and anybody that tried to argue with him really knew this. And what I remember, and I bet we can all remember, is that face that he would sometimes make where you knew that an argument was going to start. He kind of gave you one of these, and it said, you know what, you're bullshitting me, and you're starting an argument now. So his friends knew this, and you know who else knew this? Restaurant managers knew this. Because sometimes he was told to pack up and take his argument elsewhere. And I think on more than one occasion, he was asked to go on a kind of a forced sabbatical from Alpha Pizza just up the street. Among everything else, what Dan really was, and that's made this a lot easier, is that he was about the now. It was about the now. So we're going to go to Highs in a limo now. We're going to Hawaii now. We're going to Europe now. Because we don't know what it is that's going to be happening tomorrow. We have to fly at it. And he actually did say to us a few times, look at guys, I'm probably not going to make 80, so let's have fun now. He put a lot of mileage on his body. We know that. And these were not the soft highway miles either. He put mileage on his body. This place back in the 80s was not a health club. But he lived his life exactly on his own terms. He went out strong. He was kind and he was generous to his friends and family. He wanted them to have as much fun as he was having. Well,